My name is Henry and my wife's name is Maria. Until recently, I thought our relationship was going great. We both have prestigious jobs and often get out of the house for various trips. But everything changed when Maria's ex-boyfriend showed up. I want to share with you what happened next and how I saw it all. I came home from work expecting to spend the evening with my wife, with whom we have been together for 6 years. She was busy ironing her cocktail dress, and I could feel the excitement and anticipation of our plans. Her social outings had always fascinated me. Maria exuded beauty, eliciting envious glances from those around her. Her swarthy skin, dark brown eyes, long loose hair and slender, athletic body created a stunning image. Before I could ask about our plans, she took the conversation in a different direction, telling me that she had accidentally met someone named Logan earlier that day. The name seemed vaguely familiar, and I assumed it was her high school sweetheart. She confirmed Logan was her boyfriend from high school, and they had broken up due to the distance between colleges. I had never met him, but she often mentioned him in conversation. Maria explained that she bumped into Logan unexpectedly in the lobby of my office building, and they agreed to meet for dinner. Despite my reservations about having anyone else join our dates, I agreed, given the special circumstances. Her news, however, came like a thunderclap. Dinner was just for her and Logan. I didn't like the idea of her meeting her ex-boyfriend alone, especially at a time when we usually had a date. I expressed my doubts, asking why I wasn't invited. She insisted that it was an old friend's dinner and she didn't want my opinion or judgment of their past to affect the evening. I countered that it was inappropriate for a married woman to dine alone with another man, especially an ex-boyfriend. Tension was building, and I offered to either go with her or decline the encounter. Such an offer angered her, and she asserted her independence, reminding me that I was her husband, not her father. Despite her protests, I persisted in expressing my dissatisfaction with the situation. In desperation, she decided to leave on her own. After she left, I grabbed a beer from the refrigerator and sat at the kitchen table, mulling over our differences. In the past, we had always discussed things until we came to a consensus on how to proceed. Neither of us implied that we would make decisions without considering the other's opinion. When she finally showed up, I had to admit that she looked amazing. My main thought, however, was that she looked too good for this dinner. As she walked by, she stopped, kissed me on the cheek and said, "We'll talk more about this when I get home, okay?" I just had to accept her words because we had already discussed the situation and she had made her position clear. She would do what she wanted without worrying about my opinion. Before I left, I reminded her of our arrangements for the future and told her to remember to use a condom. I'm not going to have sex with him, it's just dinner. She cut me off, wishing me luck, and hurried out of the house. I went to bed early. She left around 7 p.m. and I heard the bedroom door open around 10:30 p.m. She headed straight for the shower, and although evening showers were her usual routine, this was nothing unusual. Afterward, she slid into bed with me naked and whispered in my ear, "Baby, I could use some fun tonight," she told me. Honestly, the very thought that she could get turned on by Logan and then come home for intimate affairs didn't make me too happy. I just wanted to know who she was thinking about. Besides, I didn't feel like we'd fully reconciled. Lying on my back, I found the moment enjoyable, as expected, but her arguments still didn't match her expectations. She snapped, "Would you rather I get turned on by you and then have sex with him?" I calmly replied, "So you admit that talking to him turns you on?" She tried to object, "No, that's not what I meant. Regardless of the circumstances, I will only be intimate with you. I love you and I don't understand why you can't understand that." I sat up and turned to face her. "I can't understand why you can't understand why it bothers me. Whatever you were to him before, you are my wife now. My feelings should mean something, as they always have, but now that Logan is back in town, I'm suddenly an obstacle that needs to be dealt with so you can do what you want." She lowered her head and said quietly, "You're right, babe. I'm sorry about that. I should have been more considerate of your feelings. I got caught up in the moment and forgot who was really important to me. Will you forgive me?" I was relieved that she finally understood me and pulled her to me. "Of course I forgive you, darling," I replied. She looked at me with her beautiful brown eyes and asked, "Can we make love now?" We were engrossed in that moment. I forgot about it until 2 weeks later when Maria called to tell me she was delayed at work because of a special project. It was Wednesday, the very day Logan was scheduled to show up on his usual schedule. Not believing in coincidences, I decided to stop by Maria's office on my way home from work. I bought a couple sandwiches to pretend like I was bringing her dinner. After checking in at the security desk, I headed to her office. Maria worked as a secretary for a large insurance company, and in 3 years, this was the first time she'd had to stay late for work. The front door was locked since it was after hours. I tapped on the glass and she saw me. As she approached the door, she looked busy, but her face lit up with a beautiful smile when she saw me. She greeted me warmly and was surprised at my unexpected visit. I suggested we grab a bite to eat together, and we had a quick dinner in 15 minutes, discussing our days. I then left her at work and drove home. I felt silly doubting her fidelity. Perhaps it was limited to that dinner and they really did stop communicating. 2 weeks later, however, the same scenario repeated itself. She said she was working late on a new special project. Even though this could have meant increased responsibilities, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. To dispel my doubts, I decided to call her direct office line. I called at 5:45, then at 6:30. Both times she answered with no sign of trouble, expressing love and missing me. This situation repeated itself every other Thursday, and I found comfort in her unchanging answers. However, paranoia encouraged me to keep calling her regularly. The turning point occurred at a company party organized by the insurance company where Maria worked. 4 months later, I was talking to Sheila, the office manager, and jokingly mentioned special projects. It soon became clear that Sheila had not assigned any such projects to Maria in recent months. I apologized to Sheila and then realized that I had been duped. The situation with the Thursday delays became clearer. Perhaps Logan had changed his itinerary due to suspicion or coincidence. The only thing missing was proof. The next second Thursday, I parked my car near Maria's office building and saw her get out, holding Logan's hand. I followed as they drove away in a Ford Taurus, which was different from her regular Camry. The cars around them created great cover, and I could stalk them discreetly to gather the evidence I needed. I strategically parked so that I could remain undetected. From afar, I snapped a picture of them as they headed for the hotel room. Logan opened the door, and they embraced on the threshold in a long and passionate kiss. I felt a nasty kick in my stomach when I saw the ring she still wore on her finger. I wondered if she enjoyed wearing those rings at times like this. I called my lawyer, set up an appointment, and notified work of my brief absence. I waited about 2.5 hours until the door opened again. I continued taking pictures while Maria buttoned and adjusted her clothes. She looked disheveled and her demeanor left no doubt. The evidence of her being with Logan at the hotel was obvious. Putting my phone away, I headed home, glad we didn't have kids or any major assets together. Splitting the cars and bank savings in half would make things easier. Her call followed, as expected, with another explanation about a special project and a delay at work. I calmed her down by telling her everything was fine and I would see her around 7:30. I knew that would be the last meeting. I paid bills and managed our bank funds without her knowledge, knowing that a breakup was inevitable. I stopped following up when she called again to say she was running late. I wasn't surprised when I decided to grab a bite to eat on the way home, but I ate without pleasure. Then I started packing. By 7:25 when Maria returned, my things were packed, loaded into the car, and I was ready to leave. She walked in a good mood and said hello, but when she tried to kiss me, I shied away. We sat down at the kitchen table where we had shared pleasantries before. She was smiling, unaware of what awaited her. I mentioned her frequent delays at work, and she took it as a casual discussion. Not realizing the seriousness of the topic, I questioned her persistently and she became confused. The conversation began to unfold, gradually revealing the truth about her late nights and my decision that this would be our last meeting. I told her that I had found out about her affair with Logan. She was outraged and disappointed, saying she hadn't seen him since she accidentally met him a few months ago. She assured me she wasn't lying, but the look on her face didn't match her words. I pointed to the photos from 2 weeks ago and told her that if it wasn't Logan, she had to identify that man. I spread the photos out on the table. They depicted Maria leaving the room in disarray. Next to them were the divorce papers. No, Henry, please. It was nothing, just nothing. We can't forget it, she begged, but my resolve was unwavering. I reminded her of our original agreement that infidelity ended the relationship. Despite her assurances and expressions of love, I couldn't ignore her repeated betrayals and lies. I thought we had a strong marriage, she lamented. Oh, Henry, please. I love you with all my heart. I can't explain it, but all those old school feelings came back when I saw him. I wanted to experience them again. When he came back 2 weeks later and asked me out to dinner, I said yes. We ended up at a hotel. I wish I could say I didn't want to, but I agreed willingly. Each time it got easier, but less and less pleasant. I thought about putting an end to it, but obviously it was too late. I'm sorry, Henry, please. I'm so sorry. Despite her apologies and regrets, I left the apartment for the last time. 4 months later, the divorce was finalized, and at least Mary respected the decision without resistance. I found myself a one-bedroom apartment and Maria moved in with Logan, changing offices. I immersed myself in my work and still missed her, realizing we wouldn't be together anymore. Almost a year after that last evening at the kitchen table, I received a text from Maria. She wrote that she was back in town and wanted to meet up. We agreed to see each other at a small bar near my apartment. As I walked in, I noticed her in the far corner. She had lost a noticeable amount of weight, but she still looked beautiful, albeit different. I greeted her warmly, hugging her lightly and kissing her cheek. "What brings you to town, Maria?" I asked, taking a seat across from her. She ordered a Coke, and I got a strawberry daiquiri, which surprised her a little. She noticed the change in my habits and commented, "That doesn't sound like you." "A lot has changed in the last year. Life is full of surprises," I replied. The anger and resentment had already subsided, and we just sat together like two old acquaintances. Maria admitted that Logan had cheated on her. I found that ironic, but expressed sympathy and asked how she found out. "Turns out there are other husbands who were less tolerant than you. Some of them got together and physically expressed their displeasure with Logan by sending him to the hospital. After that, he disappeared. I don't know where he went," she replied. She turned to me, "Henry, I am truly sorry for my actions. I was foolish to fall in love with the memory of a man who no longer exists and may never have existed. We had a wonderful marriage and I still love you. I've learned my lesson. Is there any chance?" At that moment, the door opened and a figure in a knee-length blue dress walked toward me. The tall blonde placed her purse on a chair, pecked me on the cheek and said, "Hey babe, sorry I'm late. My appointment ran late." She took my drink and sipped through the straw. "I got your message. It's all taken care of. Of course, there's no such thing, but I'm ready to spend this evening with you," she said. "Maria, this is my girlfriend Renee. Renee, this is my ex-wife Maria." Renee smiled. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you." Renee turned to Maria warmly. "I've heard a lot about you." "I hope it's something good," said Maria. Renee added with a smile. "He spoke very highly of you, except for the last few months of your marriage, but that's probably not surprising." Maria became a little sad. "He's a good guy," she said, turning to Renee. "Stick with him and be smarter than me." "I plan to do that," Renee replied. "We've already made plans." I watched their conversation, feeling slight compassion when Maria's eyes noticed the wedding ring on Renee's finger. She was somewhat confused and smiling, said, "Congratulations, that's great. I'm happy for you." Renee smiled back. "You were hoping to get him back, weren't you?" Maria sighed. "Yeah, I was hoping to, but I don't seem to have a chance. I think I should go now." "No need to be in such a hurry," Renee said, putting her hand on Maria's arm. "I really want to get to know you better." Maria was puzzled. "Why would you want to get to know your fiance's ex-wife?" "Because you were an important part of his life and meant a lot to him. You helped him become the man I came to love. Why wouldn't I want to get to know you better and even be friends with you?" Renee explained, adding, "Although, of course, I won't let you two be alone together. It's just common sense." Maria smiled sadly. "How ironic. I was once told that while in a relationship, you shouldn't be alone with your exes. I wish I had followed that advice back then."